So,
You step up just a little bit.
yeah.
How do you feel after the briefing today, sir?
I went into the briefing believing it was virtually impossible for an operation like this to be carried out without the Crown Prince's knowledge. I left the briefing with high confidence that my initial assessment of the situation is correct. I left the briefing being amazed by our CIA and intelligence community's capability and their analytical reasoning. The CIA, in my view, rose to the occasion in terms of informing the Congress about what happened on October the 2nd, what's happened since, and what happened before. So I am very satisfied with the briefing. There's a desire by the intelligence community to limit the number of people briefed. After that request was made, I understand now why they want to keep it more limited than before. So here's my takeaway, that Saudi Arabia is a strategic ally and the relationship is worth saving, but not at all cost. We'll do more damage to our standing in the world and our national security by ignoring MBS than dealing with him. MBS, the Crown Prince, is a wrecking ball. I think he's complicit in the murder of Mr. Khashoggi to the highest level possible. I think the behavior before the Khashoggi murder was beyond disturbing, and I cannot see him being a reliable partner to the United States. Saudi Arabia and MBS are two different entities. If the Saudi government is going to be in the hands of this man for a long time to come, I find it very difficult to be able to do business because I think he's crazy. I think he is dangerous, and he has put the relationship at risk. No one has fought for this relationship harder than myself and Senator McCain. Senator McCain and I went on the floor stopping lawsuits against the kingdom for complicity in 9/11 because we did not believe the royal family was involved in the planning and execution of the 9/11 attacks. If John McCain were alive, I believe he would be standing with me today, leading the charge to come down like a ton of bricks on the Crown Prince for what he's done to the relationship, the way he's destabilized the region. So what will I do? I will try to work my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to send a statement before the end of this Congress that in fact the Crown Prince was complicit in the murder of Mr. Khashoggi, that during his tenure as Crown Prince he's put the region in chaos and has undercut the relationship, and I cannot support arms sales to Saudi Arabia as long as he's going to be in charge of this country. The war in Yemen has gotten out of control. The brutality of this murder is beyond my sharing it with you. It was one of the most brutal acts one could imagine, and it says a lot about him as a person, and everybody is watching us. There are people who are raising their voice in dissent throughout the region and the world. They look to America for a helping hand. There are other people in the region who will see this as a green light if we look the other way. We have relationships with many countries throughout the world. If they believe the relationship is more important than our values, then they're going to get the wrong message and the world becomes a more dangerous place.
So what legislation are you proposing?
Did you hear the audio in there? Did
Huh?
you hear the audio of the
No.
murder in
What
there?
legislation were you
Secretary
proposing?
Secretary Pompeo stood where you're standing right now
Okay.
last week and said he had seen no direct
Right.
evidence of the prince's involvement. Did you see direct
I
evidence
think
today, or is that-
Secretary Pompeo and Mattis are following the lead of the president. There's not a smoking gun, there's a smoking saw. You have to be willfully blind not to come to the conclusion that this was orchestrated and organized by people under the command of MBS, and that he was intricately involved in the demise of Mr. Khashoggi. Open source reports show that he had been focusing on Mr. Khashoggi for a very long time. It is zero chance, zero, that this happened in such an organized fashion without the Crown Prince. As to Pompeo and Mattis, I have great respect for them. I would imagine if they were Democratic, in a Democratic administration, I would be all over them for being in the pocket of Saudi Arabia, but since I have such respect for them, I'm going to assume that they're being good soldiers, and when they look at the analysis, they're being technical in their statement, but they're not giving the assessment that I think the Senate will have. I would really question somebody's judgment if they couldn't figure this out. It is there to be figured out. Please let me finish. And I think the reason they don't draw the conclusion that he's complicit is because the administration doesn't want to go down that road, not because there's not evidence to suggest he's complicit.
You said you've been working on a statement over the next, between now and
So I'm going to do two things.
Anything
I'm going to do
more
two
teeth
things.
than that?
Yes, I'm going to try to get a sense of the Senate resolution where we all vote and designate MBS as one of the people responsible for the death of Mr. Khashoggi, that he was complicit in the murder, that I not only have high confidence, overwhelming belief that that's the case. Then what do you do about it? I want to make sure that Saudi Arabia is put on notice, that business as usual has come to an end for me. I will not look at the kingdom the same way that I used to look at it. I will not support arms sales until all responsible for the death of Mr. Khashoggi have been brought to justice. I will no longer support the war in Yemen as constructed.
So you're still pushing the Menendez bill,
Does that mean you will
Yeah, we're
vote
working on it.
for the
legislation
Sanders
will you support?
resolution?
No, I think that's the wrong approach. What I want to do is make a statement about the complicity of the Crown Prince that I think is supported overwhelmingly by the evidence. Then I want sanctions imposed, global Magnitsky Act sanctions against those responsible, and I want to put the world on notice that if you align yourself with the United States, you try to integrate your economy with ours, you try to do joint military operations, there's a certain expectation you have to meet. And one of those expectations is that you will not be involved in extrajudicial killing of a journalist in the most brutal fashion. And if we don't send that message, we're really making the world a more dangerous place.
What do you think?